Hey, it's Emily and this is going to be a wrap up of everything I read in April. So I have about 11, but well, I say about, I have exactly 11 books to talk to you about today, as I had a really good, productive reading month, reading 11 books, which is quite good for me, and is the biggest reading month of the year so far for me. However, it was probably my lowest rated month on average. I'll just double check that. Yeah, so April was the lowest rated month. It had an average of 3.67, which is the lowest only by slightly, as March was 3.7, so it's only gone down slightly. Can't complain too much. I read quite a variety of books. I read a total of 3,446 pages across the month, which averaged out across the 11 books at 287 pages. Yeah, we got definitely quite a mix, and I look forward to talking to you about it. I'm about to do that, so I think with that, let's just jump on in to the first book. So the first book that I read in April was Blackout by a variety of authors. I have the Waterstones exclusive edition. This was alright. I read it all in one day on the first day of the month. It was good, it was interesting. I liked the little stories, and I liked that one of the stories, I can't remember which one or who wrote it, by Tiffany D. Jackson, The Long Walk, appeared throughout, so that was like, had like 4 different parts I think throughout the story, maybe more, and then between each of those parts were other stories. I quite liked that long one because it felt more developed, but aside from that, this didn't really blow me away. I think it's a beautiful book. I love the cover and like the foiling and the spine. I think the stenciled like sprayed edges are beautiful, but it just wasn't for me. It didn't blow me away. I was intrigued. I liked it. It wasn't too bad. And I did give it 3.5, so it wasn't an awful rating from me. I just can't see myself rereading this. I can't remember half the stories in here to talk about, so I have decided to unhaul this book. It'll be listed on my Vinted, which is linked in the description if you are interested in it. But yeah, this is just a sort of short story collection of romance like young adult romances, love stories, and they're all set in New York when there's a huge blackout across the whole city, and it just follows different people throughout the city, like different teenagers, and they're all romance stories. So yeah, that's it for this one really. But yeah, like I said, I am unhauling this. I won't be rereading it, and I have no reason to keep it on my shelves. So the next book that I read, I also read on the first day of April. I binged it because it's nice and short, and that is The Jungle Book by Rudyard Kipling. This is the illustrated edition, like trying to find an example, like the font is huge, and this is only part of it, like it's not both Jungle Book stories, but yeah, there's like full page illustrations throughout, and it was just really pretty, like a really nice edition. But I'm not gonna actively look for like the second part. Like I found this edition in a charity shop ages ago for like, I think it was like £2, maybe £2.50, so that's why I picked it up. And yeah, it was one of my children's classics I got in a box set as well, like a paperback set that I have on my like top children's classics shelf, and I'm slowly getting through those, and so this was like this month's pick. I did actually read another children's classic this month, but we'll get onto that later. That was Jungle Book. I gave it 3 stars in the end. It wasn't anything special, and I don't know, I had such fond memories of the movie, and this didn't quite match up. But aside from that, I don't have much else to say about this. It was alright. Wasn't amazing, but the illustrations are really nice and really added to the story. I think I probably wouldn't have even given it 3 stars if it wasn't for the illustrations. Like that really boosted my enjoyment for it. It wasn't bad, it just was meh, but I still am going to keep this edition because I think it's really nice and pretty, and I also like collect children's classics because I'm cool like that. And with that, let's jump on in to, I was gonna say roll number 3, like my TBR game, but like book 3 on my wrap up. Next, I did pick up Paperbacks from Hell by Grady Hendrix, and I find horror really interesting, so I was definitely intrigued to read this. The audiobook was included like in your Audible subscription, and the ebook was on Scribd, so that's how I originally consumed it. But like the formatting on Scribd was really weird with like all the images, because throughout it's got like the book covers in and like loads of images, and on Scribd the formatting was just not it. So when I went into Forbidden Planet with a friend this month, I picked up the physical because I'm just so intrigued by horror, and especially like 80s, 70s, 80s, early 90s horror. And so I found it so interesting, and I did really enjoy it. And the like covers throughout were really interesting. So I did rate this 4 stars. I don't know why I rated it, but I did, and so I gave it 4. That's just what it felt like. But I am definitely going to look through the pictures again, because like I said, the formatting on Scribd, while it had the pictures, like it was just a little bit confusing. So I am going to go back through the physical edition at some point and just have a look at like the pages where it's like this with just covers, because that wasn't really, it didn't come across well on Scribd. Yeah, I don't really know how to describe it, but I do love Grady Hendrix. He is probably one of my favourite horror authors, if not my the favourite, my favourite, my one, whatever, my one. That's pretty much it. This also was probably the most expensive book I've ever bought, because I don't buy expensive books. I particularly avoid them. It was £22, and I'll talk about it in my haul. I just love Grady Hendrix, and I was just so interested in learning more about the history of horror. But yeah. So next up, I have read another short story collection, and that was Marple, because I love Agatha Christie, we all know this. But this was a new publication of 12, is it 12? Yeah, 12 short stories, all by different authors, but all featuring Miss Marple. And we love Miss Marple, she's such a wholesome character. It had some authors that I'd read from before, such as Lucy Foley, Karen M. McManus, Ruth Ware, Val McDermid I've read from, Leigh Bardugo. I haven't actually read anything from her because I DNF'd Six of Crows. Yeah, I just had such a fun time reading this. Each story was really good and really felt like they were written in the style of Agatha Christie. Like, you could kind of separate it from the authors, but they all had their own like touch to it. It was nice, and I read it really quickly. Each story, I think with short stories, because each story was about 30 pages maybe, kind of, I would say between 25 and 50 pages each, it was easy to get through them. And so once I finished a story, I just get straight into the next one, and then I was motivated to finish that story, if that makes sense. I just found myself reading it really quickly. I read it on the train on the way to London when I went book shopping with a friend, and yeah, I just had a good time reading this. I haven't read many Miss Marple stories actually from Agatha Christie, so I definitely want to pick up more. The only downside is they designed all the covers for the Miss Marple books, and I'd started collecting them in the old covers, but I've only got a few, and now that you just can't find them anywhere in bookstores, so I'm just gonna have to decide whether I find them secondhand on like Vinted, or if I want new copies, if I just restart collecting the whole edition, like the whole series, sorry. Like, do I just get rid of the ones I have and start from scratch? That's a tough decision. And I gave this one 4 stars because on the whole it was really good. Like, I enjoyed my time reading it. Some stories were really good, and I probably give them like 4.5. None of them were really 5 stars, but other stories throughout it weren't as amazing, so like 3.5, but I settled on a 4 overall because that's what it felt like. There we go. Then I picked up Different for Boys by Patrick Ness, because we all know I also love Patrick Ness. We have an Agatha Christie shelf and a Patrick Ness shelf, and this is his latest release that came out this year in March. And I picked up a signed edition from Waterstones when I was book shopping in London this month. So there's his signature. And this is, I can't remember the character's name, this is so bad. So this follows Ant, and he's a secondary school student, and it's just kind of talking about him and his friendship with like the guys. There's a lot of homophobia in it, so I'd say that definitely be careful going into that if that's a trigger for you. But yeah, it discusses masculinity, sex, friendship between this group of boys, and all the boys in the friendship group are very different, and it just follows Ant throughout his friendship and relationships with these different boys at school. And it is illustrated. I really like the illustrations. They just appeared throughout, not on every page, but it was nice. And it's another signed Patrick Ness on my shelf. I decided to give this 4 stars. It wasn't my favourite Patrick Ness, but I'm yet to be disappointed, like actually disappointed by a Patrick Ness book. I still really enjoyed it. 4 stars is still a good rating from me, but it wasn't like mind-blowing, and I do prefer some of his other stuff. But that being said, I still really did enjoy it, and he's still one of my favourite authors. So the next book that I'm going to talk about is actually my lowest rated book this month. I gave it 2.5, and it's another children's classic. My children's classics this month have not been hitting the mark, and that's Stuart Little by E.B. White. I loved the movie as a child. I think Stuart Little 2 was the first movie I ever saw in the cinema as a child, but this was just like different. I don't know how to describe it, maybe just because it was set in like an earlier time period, whereas obviously the movies was more modern, but it just felt so like random at points and like just obviously unrealistic, because obviously it's got fantastical elements to it, but it just felt so just random at points. And the ending just wasn't really an ending, it just kind of stopped. Like it just was a bit of an underwhelming ending. You felt like it should have gone on or had some sort of resolution to the story, but it didn't. So yeah, that's why I gave it 2.5. If you don't know the story of Stuart Little, he's a mouse, but he's like born into a human family, and there's this bird called Marple, and she is looked after by his family, and then Marple flees the nest essentially. She goes back out into the wild and disappears, and Stuart decides to go on a hunt to find her, but genuinely has no idea where she is, so he just heads north. That's it. It was interesting. Not sure how I feel about it. I'm not sure how I feel about it, but it was just, yeah, probably the most disappointing read of the month, but not too bad. I mean, it was 2.5. It was kind of like right in the middle of 5-star, like between 1 and 5. Like, it wasn't amazing. I'm glad I read it. Another children's classic ticked off the list. So next up, I read Out of Sight, Out of Time by Ali Carter, which is the 5th book in the Gallagher Girls series, which I am slowly rereading for the first time since I was about 13, 14, reading the series for the first time. So this was the first book that I hadn't actually finished when I was younger. So before I got these newer editions, I literally had book 3, 5 and 6 from years ago, and my bookmark was in book 5 the whole time, so I obviously never finished book 5 or read book 6, so it was nice to finally finish this off. I really enjoyed it. I just felt it was such a comfort read. The nostalgia was just there and I felt amazing reading it. It was just, I binged it so quickly. I just had such a fun time reading it. I gave it a 4 stars. Mostly I think the nostalgia bumped it up a little bit, but it was still really good. I still really enjoyed it. We're getting more into the like overarching plot. Like, it was not, oh, it's just such a nice book that like to sit down and read, and I definitely want to finish off this series very soon. One more book is right there, and I just, yeah, can't wait to like conclude the series. I can't really say much about what this is about without giving spoilers, but essentially it follows a girl called Cami, and she goes to a school for spies. It's an all-girls boarding school, and nobody knows that they're a school for spies. They're just like a school for excellent students, but secretly they actually train up these girls to become like CIA agents, MI5. There's girls from all around the world and they can all speak different languages. They do all sorts of lessons that aren't like your maths, your English. They do some of that, but it's more like it's like covert operations. But yeah, it's just a fun time, and I just have really enjoyed rereading them. And I'll probably keep them and reread them again in the future, because they're just such a part of my like not childhood but like early teen reading experience. That's about it really. They're not even amazing, and I definitely feel that like at this point the characters are 17 and I still feel like they're 14, and I still picture them as being 14-year-olds in my head, sorry. And I keep having to remind myself like, actually no, Emily, they're 17, they're seniors in high school now by this book. But in my head, I think because they speak like 14, 15-year-olds, they had the maturity of that age. That's why I'm like struggling to grow older, which I think is why I didn't rate it even higher. I definitely feel that the characters are quite immature for their age, but it's fine. It's fine. So next up, I read An Unwanted Guest by Shari LaPena, and I gave this one 3.5. I quite enjoyed this. It was kind of another take on, you know, there's a snowstorm, everyone's trapped, a murder happens, they're like, oh, one of us is the killer or something like that. It's like one of those sorts of books. It's basically about a load of guests that arrive at a guest house in the middle of like woods. There's a snowstorm, and then one of the guests is found dead. There are suspicions of murder. The police can't get here until like the snow melts, and then once again another body is found, and they're like, something's not right, we need to sort this out. This is my 3rd one from this author. They're just an easy thriller, like they don't ever blow me away. Sometimes there's like surprises along the way, but they're never anything too special, but they're just easy to read. They're the sort of books that I will unhaul, and so I am unhauling this. because I'm not going to read it again. I find a lot of the time with thrillers, I'm not going to reread it once I know the twists and I know who the killer is. There were a couple surprises actually towards the end that I wasn't expecting. However, most of them I did guess, and while it was just like a fun, easy read, I'd still want, I don't know, I expect a little bit more. But yeah, like I said, I gave this 3.5. I have no interest in rereading this. I am still going to continue reading this author's books. I have a couple still on my TBR. I think I've got about 2 left to read from her, maybe 3. But ultimately, yeah, they're just easy, and I like how all the covers match. That's just nice and satisfying. Not that I'm keeping any of them, I haven't kept any of them. Pretty sure I got this secondhand anyway, but yeah, if you want it, I'll link my Vinted down below. I haven't really got much else to say about this book. Like your standard adult thriller, the sort of ones you find in Tesco's. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it was just, you know, wasn't anything amazing, but I still enjoyed it. Like, it was still an easy, fun read. And 3.5 isn't that bad from me. Really, it isn't. Next up, we have a book that I have already sold on my Vinted. It literally went very quickly, and that is Our Stop by Laura Jane Williams. So I did really enjoy this. I gave it 4 stars. So I'm not unhauling it because I didn't like it. I still really enjoyed it, but it's a book I'm never going to read again, and I feel like someone else will enjoy it more. So it's a romance. It basically follows this woman and man, and they get the same train every day, and the guy puts an ad in the newspaper in like this misconnections column saying, oh, you know, to the woman with the coffee stain on her top, I like you, do you want to go for a coffee, basically. And then it kind of starts a back and forth on like when they're messaging, well, not messaging, but like communicating through this column in the newspaper. And yeah, it was just kind of very predictable. And a couple of points I was like, this is so unrealistic, that like, what's going on? Like, I don't mind in a book when they're, you know, they haven't met but they're communicating, and oh, by chance they're at the same place but they didn't see each other, that sort of thing. But it was so many of those. I was like, come on, this guy knows what she looks like. She doesn't know what he looks like, but he knows what she looks like, and you're not spotting her and not making any sort of attempt at communicating. But overall, I enjoyed it. It was a standard romance, but I'm never going to reread it. I liked that it was dual perspective. I enjoy books like that, and I liked the audiobook narrators, because I listened to it on Scribd while reading along physically. I liked that the narrators were like 2 different narrators. One of them was Carrie Hope Fletcher, and I can't remember the name of the other one, but it was good. It was alright. It wasn't a bad reading experience by any means. It got 4 stars from me. I enjoyed it. I just know I won't read it again, and I have more Laura Jane Williams on my TBR that I will definitely read soon. Probably over summer, but Our Stop didn't blow me away, and I'll probably just leave it at that. We've got 2 more books, and this next one, my penultimate book in April, was If I Disappear by Eliza Jane Brazier. Chloe gifted this to me a while ago actually. I think it said in 2021, so I think it was like Christmas 2021. So thank you, Chloe, for sending this my way a while ago. Finally got around to reading it. Chloe also read it this year. So this had like a podcast element. It's a thriller. Basically it follows this girl Sarah. This podcast that she listens to, the like podcaster, she goes missing, and she is obsessed with this podcast and this like person. And so Sarah goes to her hometown, to her parents' farm, and basically gets a job on her parents' farm to try and then investigate what happened to her, because it appears that no one's doing anything about it, and she's like, we should be looking for this woman. And I would say there were twists on the way that I didn't get, but I literally called like the main twists, like, and I knew essentially what had happened. It was nice that they had podcast elements, so like at the start of each chapter there's like a little paragraph like as part of the script from her podcast, or like the transcript, whatever the word is. And it was a good quick read. I say quick, it took me like 5 days to read, but that's because I was really busy with work. But when I sat down and read it, I blasted through pages and pages of it, so it was really easy, but it wasn't anything amazing. I liked how Sarah, the main character, also got into like a fair bit of danger along the way. Like if she was just like investigating and it was just a standard sort of mystery that she was figuring out, I don't think it would have been as exciting. Whereas with the whole like danger aspect, how she was then potentially going to disappear as well, that was really intriguing. And I liked how the family that this podcast, I can't even remember her name, Rachel who does the podcast, when she goes missing, like her family, the whole town just don't get along with them. they're kind of shunned from the town, like the community. So that was really intriguing, and that's why like nobody was doing anything about it. I am also unhauling this, so this is going on my Vinted, because I'm not going to reread it. Like I said earlier, when I read thrillers, once I know the plot twists, I probably won't ever reread them again. Like there's a couple I've kept because I either annotated them loads or I really enjoyed them, but most of the time I just unhaul thrillers because I'm not going to reread them once I know the twists. Plus there's always a library if I'm that desperate. And finally, on to the last book I read in April, and that is Some Kind of Wonderful by Giovanna Fletcher. I forgot to say I gave that 3.5 stars, I don't know if I said that already, but I also gave this 3.5 stars. So this is the third Giovanna Fletcher book that I have ever read. I've read Walking on Sunshine and Billy and Me, and I have, as you can see, them all in like the matching covers that I bought from the works, like a box set. So this one, it was alright. So it follows this main character called Lizzie and her boyfriend Ian. They've been together 10 years. She's waiting for a proposal, and so when they go on holiday to Dubai, she's like, this is it, it's gonna happen. And then instead, on like the last night, he breaks up with her and she comes back without a ring and without a boyfriend. She's heartbroken because all she's known since she was 18, they've been together for 10 years since she was 18 at university, so she's like, who am I? And so it's about her like discovering herself again throughout and finding new hobbies, reconnecting with people, making new friends, going out and trying new things, just to kind of find herself again. It was good, it was alright, it was a fun time, it was a very easy read. Like it was just that kind of standard like Giovanna Fletcher, Sophie Kinsella kind of vibe, where I really enjoy them, but they're not anything like mind-blowing, but they're very easy to read. I don't really know what else to say about this. Like it was good, it didn't really have much of a plot, like it kind of just followed her life. Like it didn't feel like it had that much character development. Like yes, you could see her grow and change, but you don't really know what she was like before the relationship ended, because it literally, that's how the book opens, is him breaking up with her, so you don't really see much of her in the relationship, if that makes sense. At one point a male character came up and I thought it was going to be like a love interest, and I was like, come on, like you can't say the resolution and like the solution to her problems is to bring in another guy and start dating again. I was like, come on, no. I was glad that it didn't work out like that, and I won't say any more, but at first I was like, you got to be kidding me. Another just like fixed problem with another boyfriend, okay. But yeah, it was nice, quick, easy. Pretty much it for me about this book. It just didn't blow me away. Yeah. So that's all the books that I read in April. I'd say overall it was a good reading month. It wasn't amazing, nothing blew me away particularly. The highest rating was a 4, and I had quite a few 4, but I also had like a 2.5 in there, a couple 3s, 3.5, like it was kind of very average. It wasn't anything too special, so on the whole, not too bad. But as I'm filming this, we are 6 days into May, and I would say May is already giving me a better reading month. And on that, I'd like to say thank you very much for watching. If you stayed to the end, I really do appreciate it. Please give the video a like if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you're new around here, and I will see you soon with a brand new video. Bye!